welcome to episode 437 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans' weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Zach Wilkerson, and I will be your host today. And today we're here to talk about something that is, well, it sort of falls into our retro category. Games have to be older than 2 years. And even though this game is still ongoing, we are going to be continuing our Final Fantasy XIV Retro Encounter series. We've talked about all the first 4 expansions, and today we're going to talk about the 5th one. We're going to talk about Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. But before we get into that, let's introduce the panel, starting with you, Mike.
Hello. I'm not the Mike you're used to on Retro Encounter, but I am here.
No, indeed. No, indeed. And Audra.
Salutations.
Hello. So, we were talking before the show started, and I was like, man, we could talk about Endwalker for like 3 days, because I'm guessing, if you're like me, the two of you, that you absolutely adored Endwalker. Like, Endwalker is like, if I had to pick like a 5 favorite games, I would still pick this expansion out and plop it in there, because I think that much of Endwalker. And part of that is how it's led to, because like it's unfair to compare Endwalker to other video games, because Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker is an expansion of Final Fantasy XIV, and it wraps up an entire story arc that had been going on for 10, maybe 13 years, depending on how you do the math. And so I want to kind of talk about our journeys first, because I think our journey is an important element of understanding our experience with Endwalker. And sort of how we got started with 14, what our experience with it, what kind of player we are, and just sort of our general experience with playing the game. So because I already know Mike's pretty well, I'm going to start with Audra. Audra, what is your experience with Final Fantasy 14? How'd you get started? Sort of what's been your rhythm with it?
Well, I started on one of the free trials for A Realm Reborn. I decided to finally give it a try. I played FF11 a couple of years back, and I really had enjoyed it, but I had to stop it due to time constraints. So I was like, I'm not going to get into Final Fantasy XIV. That sounds like it's going to be too much of a commitment. But I ended up giving it a shot, and I absolutely loved the story. I am admittedly, because of my social awkwardness, I'm very much kind of an antisocial player. And
I am also an antisocial player, so I understand.
Yeah. Plus, I tend to be on sporadically. Like I try to go on at least once a month if I can, but I mean sometimes I just can't. So I'm like I'm not on a free company because I'm afraid I just wouldn't think it would be fair to other players and everything. So I love the duty finder. Yep. So,
even though I'm in an FC, I still love the duty finder.
Yes. So that's kind of my experiences. I've enjoyed playing the game, but I'm very shy with playing it. So,
and I know some other times we've talked about it, Audra, that you said like you sort of were behind the main story. Have you finished Dawn Trail at this point as well?
No, I have downloaded Dawn Trail, but I haven't started it yet. So I finally finished Endwalker.
So you're through all the patches in Endwalker, and you're ready to start Dawn Trail?
Yeah.
Okay, good for you. Dawn Trail's pretty fun. We'll talk about that a little bit too. So Mike, tell us a little bit about your history with 14.
Boy, I feel like I've told this story a lot, so I'll try to keep a short version here. I started just before A Realm Reborn relaunched in 2013. I famously, and I say famously like amongst myself, an RPG fan, did not want to play the game at E3 in 2013. A few RPG fan staff was like, come on, let's get in line. Let's do this thing. I'm like, no. I know about that one. It's a disaster, because I knew about 1.0. So I didn't even at E3. I'm like, no, I'm not going to stand in line for an hour to play this thing. I'm not interested in the game at all. A month later, I was signed up for the closed beta, and I have been playing ever since. I've not had my subscription lapse once in that time. In fact, it's just become too important of a game to me. So yeah. So there it is. There's the short version. That's how I got started.
That is a pretty short version. Yeah. I mean, I know that, I feel like it's it's a different experience probably as someone who's like sort of gone through it at the rhythm that the game was sort of intended, right? Like
Yes.
this patch, this patch, this patch, and whereas like someone like me, I go through those Realm Reborn patches, and I'm like, oh my goodness, are these done yet? But they were probably kind of fun as you were playing through them at the time. So yeah, I'm glad you're here because like that's sort of that really extended history with the series or with the game means something.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I mean, just to touch on that a little bit, but like the thing was, like, there was so much less of the game back then. I mean, when the game launched, you got to level 50, and there was two dungeons. I mean, there were two dungeons at level 50, so like there was a couple things to do at the end to like do end game stuff, and there wasn't much. I mean, Crystal Tower, the first raid, wasn't out for like 3 months. So like we were used to a much smaller a much smaller range of activities to do. Um, but it's grown so much now. Like I know looking back or coming into the game now, it's like, huh. It's like I know there's all this other stuff, but right now it's pretty slow, and it is comparatively.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll talk because I think some people leveled that criticism against the Endwalker patches, me included a little bit. But yeah, it's interesting that you say that because, like, I feel like I even as a person who has played this game for I don't know 4,000 hours. I feel like I still just, have scratched the surface of everything that I could participate in. But the thing that's great about 14 is that you don't have to, you know what I mean? Like there are so many different ways you can engage with it that are fruitful and interesting that I'm not really worried about the fact that I've never even unlocked a crafter. Like I don't even know what that's like. I watch my wife do it and I'm like, that looks boring. But I really like the stuff that I do. So in terms of my story, I sort of land somewhere in between the two of you. I started technically like right before the pandemic. We're talking like late January, early February 2020. And then it turned out that like I started playing at the right time because I had plenty of time to get through. And so we were in like Shadowbringers like 5.2 when I started, but by the time that I got to the end game, we were in Shadowbringers 5.3, and oh my goodness, what a place to end. Shadowbringers 5.3 is just like I think it's the best patch in the entire series or in the entire game, just in terms of the trial, the story, just phenomenal. And I have played consistently ever since. I don't get on every day, but I've got into like the sort of the savage raiding scene. I've got like my mentor crown. Like I feel like I've done so many things in this game, and I feel like I'm still like not a veteran, even though I know that at this point that I am. um, and so yeah, Final Fantasy 14 has been super important in my life in a lot of ways. I'd say that if it wasn't for Final Fantasy 14, I probably wouldn't even have gotten to know my wife as well as I did. So
Aw.
it means a lot to me. But yeah, and Endwalker in particular means a lot. So just to kind of back up for a second and kind of talk about the background of Endwalker. So Final Fantasy 14 Endwalker is, and if you haven't played it, maybe stop listening now, but because we're going to spoil it really hard.
Yeah.
Um, it's the culmination of the first 13 or 10 years of the storytelling cycle of Final Fantasy 14, the Hydaelyn Zodiac arc. It leaves off of Shadowbringers, so you're coming out of Shadowbringers, you're coming out of the first, you really get to know Emmett Selk really well and get to know sort of the background of why the Ascians are doing what they're doing, sort of what happened to some degree with with their version of the final days, where their society is sort of destroyed by something, and you're never really aware as you're playing Shadowbringers exactly what caused that. But as you start going through the patch cycles, you learn more about sort of the fractures in the Ascians and the way the Ascians see things in different ways. And you fight the Warrior of Light, who Elidibus calls, and then you sort of start getting set up to go off to Charlian, which is the hub city for the main game of Endwalker. To sort of get a feel for what's going on with the final days. You want to do some research into the final days because you know that something's happening after the Sundering. Um, So there's a lot of background here. There's a lot of emotional weight that goes into Endwalker, and so even coming into the game, like I remember thinking like this was going to be amazing. Like my expectations were sky high, and Endwalker met them. And even from like the very beginning, where like you're in Charlian, and Charlian is just like this beautiful town of learning, and you're starting to sort of get a feel for what this society is, and there's something sort of going on, like the Charlians know something else about the final days that you don't know. But it's just like a really good setup to sort of like give you a little bit of space to breathe as you start kind of getting a feel for some of sort of those end game problems. So like what were your impressions of Charlian? What were your early impressions of Endwalker? What was your expectations going in? How are your feelings coming into Endwalker?
Also incredibly high, expectation wise. The trailer, of course, did not help matters. I watched that trailer constantly before the game came out.
Oh, it's so good. I still think Shadowbringers trailer might be a little better, but like
Just a little.
it's really good. Shadowbringers is excellent too, for the record. There's a retro encounter episode about that you can go listen to.
The Endwalker trailer did something important to me that, of course, the game itself would go on to expand upon, and that it featured music motifs from all of the expansions in that trailer, and it really gave you an idea, musically anyway, of what you were in for. Because, of course, that theme gets used throughout the game, but that's also what Endwalker does. But yeah, so my expectations were high, and as a paladin main, every expansion has like a featured job. So I admit selfishly that the featured job for Endwalker was paladin. It just felt very tailored to me, and I appreciate that. Um, as for Charlian, this is another one that I'm interested in how you guys feel about this aspect of it. But as someone who's been playing for so long, old Charlian is something that's like been talked about for, I don't know when it was first mentioned, maybe somewhere in Heaven's Word, I think is the first mention of it, as like a place. And then if you do like the relic weapons in A Realm Reborn, about Thavnair and Radzat Han. And so it's like the idea that these places that you've heard about, that I've heard about for like 10 years, that you finally get to see and explore and is actually part of the world, was like really, really fascinating. Because like my big thing with MMOs is I like exploring and seeing new things. So like just knowing that we can actually see this nation and this city for the first time, like I was like, I want to go there right now. I was really excited about just that alone.
Pretty much the same. I was very hyped because of the trailer in particular, and I don't think the early stages really diffused that at all. If anything, I was really intrigued by what you kind of knew was going on in Charlian below the surface. And kind of, I love the presentation of the city, and it really had me intrigued from the get go, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think that I mean, I kind of skipped over this, but like one of my favorite cutscenes, and there's going to be a theme here to my favorite cutscenes, is on the boat on the way to Charlian, and you're talking to Heidelin,
Mm-hmm.
and the stuff that she's talking about in terms of what you're about to go through and some of the truths that you're about to uncover. um, I feel like Charlian sets up just the right level of mystery, where you have a little bit of that personal element with the twins' father. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Fortunate.
Fortuno?
Fortuno, that's his
Fortune.
name. And sort of the interpersonal issues with that, and and how like so many of the people you're going to Charlian with like have been to Charlian, or they're from like basically from Charlian, and so like it really ups the personal stakes like very quickly. And for all the things that I loved about Shadowbringers, like Shadowbringers is like a new world, right? Like the personal stakes
Mm-hmm.
are there, of course, because of the Crystal Exarch and who he is, but I feel like, and you get to this, Mike, like there's just so much history there. And 14 does a great job of like dropping a little nibble here, a little nibble there, and then like giving you the whole meal 5 years later, 6 years later. I think about like the Warriors of Darkness in the Heavensward
Yeah.
patches,
Oh,
and then how
yes.
that becomes something in Shadowbringers. They do such a good job with laying that out.
Yeah, yeah. It's from so that's actually a good thing. Like I think that's going to be a theme through the episode is like the payoff of like storylines and this bit of lore, that bit of lore, this character story, and like it's you get a little of that like right from the outset. You're like, oh look, here's this city you've been hearing about for so long. Which we don't need to sit here and like rank like favorite hub cities or whatever, but that one's really up there for me.
Man, actually, I think we should.
Oh, okay, okay.
Because I think that Charlian, I like it a lot, but like Ishgard is number one for me. Always
I
will be
love
number one for
Ishgard.
me. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, love Ishgard. I thought there was going to be a house there. Like I didn't care how long it took me. I was going
Hmm.
to get that. Um, I really like. Gosh, what's the name of the one in Shadowbringers? My brain is not working
Oh, the
today.
Crystarium.
The Crystarium, beautiful, like very vertical in really good ways. Just really beautiful. The music, a banger. But Charlian, I think like it's a little more contained in those places. It's a little easier to kind of find your way around. And I love like sort of the Greek architecture element, and it really communicates like that. This is a place of learning.
Yeah.
And silly dress robes.
I mean,
They
I
did
like
have,
the silly dress robes.
yeah.
I think
I
they're
mean,
pretty fun.
that's what you wear when you teach, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and when we're in Charlian, we're sort of given hey, you can go to either Radzatan and Thavnair, or you can go down to Labyrinthos. And for me, like I remember when I was playing, I was like, I want to go. Well, actually, it was like you could continue to investigate in Charlian, and then you find out there's sort of like this other city underneath. It's not really a city; it's like this other sort of. I'm not sure how to describe Labyrinthos. It's an ecosystem essentially. It's like a
Like a
full
biome,
ecosystem.
maybe.
Yeah, it's a biome. Yeah, it's a full biome that's underneath, and you start getting like these little mysteries sort of laid out there, where you see them gathering all this food and bringing all these things in, and you know that they know there's something else going on. But by the best part, and this becomes the best part because of Dawn Trail, is that you meet Erenvel, who is just a character who Yoshi P said like, hey, like he was so popular, we knew we had to bring him back, but like I didn't realize how popular he was, but I just knew I liked him. Sort of his I don't know, standoffish demeanor, but also being like really thoughtful and really interesting. I really like all the stuff around Labyrinthos. So what were some of your thoughts about the Labyrinthos story?
I thought it was really interesting, and I was like, oh, I bet they're going to do some kind of arc thing with it. And not to spoil later, but I was like, yes, my theory was right. It was just a really fascinating place. And Aaronville is awesome.
He's so good. Yeah.
Yep.
For me, Labyrinthos is unfortunately the home of maybe the only piece of music in Endwalker I don't love.
Ooh.
But besides that, I do like the place. It's very interesting. All these little like research facilities, and especially early on, where you're just like you see everyone running around, everyone's rushed, and it's like they're doing something. They're gathering all these things, and like what are you, like why like what is all this about? Um, so the mystery aspect of it I thought was really interesting, and the design was cool. Since like you can't access half the area till much later, but you can see it just because of the way the place is designed in these like concentric circles. Like you could look down towards the middle, and you're like, oh, what's going on over there? But you can't get there. So that was fun. And of course, I mean, I feel like we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't mention it, but Labyrinthos is also the home to the
Home to grapes.
now infamous grapes. Ah,
Yeah, those of
I
you who we weren't playing it live, there was this very famous sort of grape vine that had these like horribly rendered grapes
well, they're
that were like
yeah.
these blocks, and people made a lot of jokes about it. But it was like in good fun, like it's like, oh, you're rendering all this stuff. Like I don't think anybody was like mad about
No, it's just like someone like decided to zoom their camera in way too much to something that was not meant to be featured.
it.
And like now I'm so jealous. I think it was of the people at it was the last fan fest, right? Who got like the little low poly grapes
It
plush.
was, yeah.
Uh, My one consolation is that they turned it into, you guys probably both know this, but there's a lamp. There's an
Mm-hmm.
outdoor lamp for your house.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as that was added to the game, I immediately crafted a few.
I don't have any for my house yet, and I feel like that's something that I should correct.
Oh, I'll make you some.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, like we sort of leave there, like not knowing what's going on, but like the other place that we could have gone was Thavnair, which is it sort of becomes like the hub for it's the home of Radzat, which is the end game hub, and it's also sort of the hub for the patch cycle. And it's this sort of Mediterranean feeling space that is like really beautiful with these huge cliff sides with these like really beautiful like rainbow colors in some of these cliff sides, and it's just like this like stunning tropical zone that I think is really great. And there's a lot of really interesting history here. We'll get to that. But the most important thing that happens in Thavnair is that we find out that Estinian has absolutely no ability to understand money.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because like I could be misremembering this. He's like trying. I think you're there with Thancred, right? And like Estinian ends up giving like 10,000 gil for like I don't know, like a piece of bread or something. I can't remember what he's buying, but it's some like absurdly overpriced thing, and it's like it's one of those moments in Endwalker where like this is a game, and we haven't gotten to the devastation of this game yet, where there is so much darkness and unhappiness going on here, and it still manages to find a way to make us laugh. And I think that's one of the keys of Final Fantasy 14. I think about like the burger that Graha eats, for example. Like it have all these like fun little moments.
Yeah, I forgot what he was buying too, but there's a little piece of dialogue that's like, you know, all three of you, your character and your companions, are like feeling like this like travel sickness or whatever. So Estinian goes off to try to help you, and then Thancred's like, I forgot, was it Ishtola? Was like Ishtola said, "Don't let him go off alone," and then you have to go like help him, right? But it's too late. He's already spent all his money.
He
Yeah.
has. No, it's like it's a payoff too, right? Like Estinian is like this character who, if you played Dragoon like me, you've known since the beginning of the game, and now like he gets like this goofiness. I think it speaks to the excellence of the storytelling in Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah, it's so important to be able to see those sides of characters, especially someone like him who's like, oh, he's just this like standoffish warrior. Like, no, like I love that. I love when you get those other insights.
No, I think it's the little moments that make it life worth living, basically. And I think that's almost the message of the game in a way.
Oh, for sure.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
we will definitely talk about that. There's no way I'm going to get to the end of this without talking about the themes of this game. But when you're in Thavnair, it's like because, and I haven't mentioned this yet, there are like these towers that have sort of gone up around the world, and you sort of discover that Fandaniel is one of the people who has put these towers up. I can't remember if this happens before or after you go to the Tower of Zot, which is one of the towers that you're trying to disable. But like, there's this whole rich history to Radzat and Thavnair. Vitra, who sort of is a dragon who is, I believe, brood of Midgard Sormer, or
Yes, the
Yes.
youngest.
the youngest brood of Midgard Sormer, who is in charge of Radzat and Thavnair, but he's using sort of like a child puppet to sort of like maneuver his way through it. And as a sucker for Heaven's Ward, I was like, ooh, more Heaven's Ward lore. I love it. So that's very exciting for me. But like he's like such a compelling character, and becomes so important in the patch cycle as well. But then you go into the Tower of Zot, and one of the favorite things about the Tower of Zot is that it is just like Final Fantasy IV, like done right. um, I love because I got to play this in a preview, so I've run the Tower of Zot like probably 50 times since Endwalker has released, and it's kind of challenging. It's fun. There's a lot to do there, but it's trying to shut that tower down to kind of get in the way of the plans of Fandaniel and Xenos, who I think Fandaniel, and we'll talk way more about Fandaniel later, but was sort of a controversial character coming into Endwalker, but I think he's sort of a compelling character in his own way, even before we find out all his rich backstory.
Yeah. Well, I mean, before Endwalker, we just had the very end of the Shadowbringers patches with him, and like what you saw of him there was like completely one note. So I did not like him at all. I'm like I know you this team makes better villains than this. And of course, there was more to it, but from what we saw before that, we didn't see that. We just saw that one note. I'm like, okay, sure. I'm just evil because I want to be. Um, but of course, that's not what it was.
Yeah, I had the same impression of him at first. And then it kind of, over time with Endwalker, you really learn a lot about his character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's around now that you realize that he is gosh, who's the guy from the Crystal Tower?
Zande.
No,
I think
he's
Emperor Zande?
he works for Zande. It's the guy
Uh,
before that with the ridiculous hat.
uh,
Amon.
Amon.
Amen. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, Amon.
Oh, do you
Sorry.
learn it that early? I thought it was way
I
later.
think it's pretty early in the
Okay.
patch cycle
Okay.
that you realize that Fan Daniel is a reincarnation of Amon. And sort of he worked for him. And even if it's not that early, it's fine. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's. I think that you get that little bit of history with him, and you don't really know much about Amon from the Crystal Tower series, as cool as it is. Like you don't know much about him, but like even there, like getting a little bit of lore makes him a little bit more interesting. And I think that just the way they set up that character, who we find out eventually is Hermes, is just really excellent. And like being able to see sort of the insanity of Fan Daniel with the sensitivity of Hermes.
Yes. I guess the only other thing I'd throw in there is, as a lifelong Final Fantasy IV fan, that dungeon definitely worked for me. I was really happy about it, and I think it's good too that they do gradually raise the bar a little bit in terms of challenge. Like I'm not the type of player who wants everything to just be harder all the time, Zach. Um, and I don't, and you know what, for this game it shouldn't. I know there's a lot of people that want that, and it shouldn't be, or you start alienating people for regular content anyway.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that as the expansions go and the level goes up, that the regular content gets, it should get a little more challenging. Otherwise you're going to get, a little bored. So yeah, like for a regular dungeon, I was like, all right, they are upping the challenge here, like from the beginning.
Yeah, I had a hard time with the boss fight, the Maja sisters. That was,
Oh, it's tough. Yeah. I mean, like
yeah.
there's all those mechanics going off at once.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was playing it, for preview, and I remember we were making a video for it, and because Greg was doing the editing, and he had like 3 examples of me dying during that last fight. I was like, you know what? I was playing Dragoon. It's worth it. I am floor tank. Yeah, I think the Tower of Zot's great, and in terms of the dungeons in general, I actually think that's the hardest of the dungeons in Endwalker, because I think that the rest of the dungeons don't really kind of bring that same level of challenge. But I love the fact that you have to kill Cindy first when you're doing that fight. Like it's like, oh man, like I didn't even think about it. Like the very first time I got to that fight, I was like, oh, it's Cindy. I'm gonna go hit her first because I knew that had to be right. Because I played 4 many times, as you have, Mike. Yeah, it's a cool dungeon. Oh gosh, we're at half an hour now, but we haven't gotten very far. But I think it's a great dungeon. So let's talk about where I think the game starts to really find itself. Like I really like both those areas. I think they're both really interesting. I think they're both really good setup. But more interesting things happen in both those places later. But Garlemald, I actually think still might be my favorite zone in the game, which is like a weird thing to say, because you get to Garlemald, and Garlemald, even if you haven't played any of the outside stuff, Garlemald's been set up for like a decade, right?
Right.
It's this huge, powerful empire, and it's just ash. It's just been totally leveled, and it's just in despair. And you're of course trying to chase Fandaniel or Amon or Hermes through this area, but I think that this is the thing that 14 does so well that I loved about it, is that it made you really sympathize with the people of Garlemald, with what they're going through, with the challenges that they're going through. And I remember when this game released, or when this expansion released, some people were like, "Oh, I can't believe they're asking us to sympathize with the people of Garlemald." And I'm like, what do you think? Like, do you think that everybody who is in an evil empire
Is
in a
evil.
history is like a bad person. Like
Mm.
it's like the Twitterization of the way people think. Like it's not that simple. It's not this like simple black and white. And I think that 14 deals with that so well. And I think that the events of Garlemald, I think, are really, really, really stunning, filled with pathos. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, like, what did you guys think about Garlemald?
I really liked it for similar reasoning. I loved the Euless character arc in general, especially when they bring him back later on
Yeah.
in the events. And
Hmm.
I think yeah, it was nice to see a different side of them.
Right, because we've really never, outside of maybe a couple people here and there, and of course, like people that we know, like Sid, um, generally don't interact with the day to day normal citizens of Garlemald. We never had. Um, I didn't know what to expect going in because I thought for sure for years now, like, well, whenever we go there, like that's going to be that's going to be an expansion. That'll be an expansion on its own. The whole nation is gigantic. I was not expecting them to be like, just kidding. We blew it up. And you're going to go there now. And it's completely different from what I thought it would be like going there. So of course, like whatever expectations I had went out the window. I also think it was really well done. Like you said, that setup, and it's kind of funny in a sad way that there was that reaction to people, because that's exactly what's played out in the game. um why are we you had people that are like, well, why are we going to do this, and others saying like, well, why wouldn't we? um and then like, and it was like a really hard earned thing too, because you had a lot of people who lived there. They're like too proud to accept it, or like, who are you? Like, you're because they're looking at us the same way. It's like, well, you're the enemy. It's like, no, 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 that's not how this works. So like, that was they did not gloss over any of that, and
Hmm.
they didn't do, it's like, okay, well, we're gonna have like, a few hours of quests here, like that played out through most of the game. um
Hmm.
and uh, you never win everyone over. I think Euless was a good, uh he's a great character for that, because like he's like the, I guess, the symbolic character, like who's like, well, like I don't trust you, but eventually like he understands more. And yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
just how your people come together with their people. um yeah, I mean, it was powerful.
Yeah. And I think you touched on something that I think is really important, that I think 14 in general does really well, is that like it's the trust between you and the people of Garlemald is not easily bought, right? Like it's not something that just happens like, oh, you're here to help us. Yeah, like this all sucks. Thanks for coming. Like it's not like, no, like we've been enemies for a long time, in the way that, any two countries, I don't want to get too political here, but the way that any two countries, like when they're enemies, the trust between them is going to be extremely hard bought. And the ways that people are always going to see the other as the bad, even if you probably were the bad. And so like just how it humanizes that, and the way that those people would have reacted to it, it humanizes the way that we try to react to it. Like the twins, I think all the work the twins do there, is really beautiful, up through the patch cycles, and all the work they're doing to try to help those people. But again, it none of it feels cheap. And I think that a lot of games would make that pretty cheap.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Oh yeah,
I
I
can't
think
think
it would
of,
be like very easy plot
yeah,
convenience.
and somehow I can't think of a single RPG off the top of my head, but like we've all seen it in other
Mm.
games where like, oh, cool, I heard you're a big hero. Thank you. Everything's fine now. I'm like, okay, let's move on. None of that here.
Yeah, and we come back to Garlemald later during the final days, and we'll talk about that. But one of the most surprising things, and this is unfortunately like slightly spoiled for me, like I think I saw online at some point what the trials were, and I saw what the first trial was, and I was like, "What?"
Oh no, you found out
uh,
ahead of time?
yeah, I did. I was very disappointed by that. But you eventually go up the Tower of Zot, and you fight, all the things you would expect, along with Anima, which is an extremely cool fight. One of my favorite dungeon fights in the game.
Yeah.
Um,
And not to interrupt, but
go ahead.
I had a note about Anima. That's the thing with Anima, is that when they were promoting this game, they always tell us like, okay, here are like some of the fights you'll do, and they never said Anima was a trial or would be a trial, but everyone assumed, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
people
I
thought the
did.
same thing about the Mega Sisters. Yeah.
Right. You're like, oh yeah, well, okay, so these are the two trials, and they definitely had us fooled. And I was like, when that thing showed up as a dungeon boss, I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too. I mean, kind of to get off track for a second here, but like you can, like, Yoshi P talked about the fact that he considered making Endwalker 2 patches or one, or 2 expansions or 1 expansion, and he decided to smash them into one, which I think was a good move because I think Endwalker is just so well paced.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you can see how they might have made, like, I think that the trial I'm about to talk about, Zodiark, would have probably been the final trial in that expansion, which would have been incredibly cool. But it's so surprising here. So like Fandaniel, frees one of the last sort of chains on Zodiark because he's being held on the moon to sort of hold back the final days. He's sort of the one who is holding back um, the energy that ends up causing the final days originally, which we learn more about later. And then you go up there, and then Fandaniel, he betrays Xenos. And I'm skipping over a lot of stuff here, but there's so much to talk about. He betrays Xenos, and he takes the body of Zodiark, and then you fight Zodiark at like level 83.
yeah.
And it also is like my least favorite extreme trial in the entire game. I still can't figure it out and never will. Like I must follow the Danger Dorito on that fight. But it's just like such a you could just see them like firing all their bullets at once. Like it's like, okay, we're gonna give you everything we got, and at level 83 you're fighting Zodiark, and it ends up contextualizing the last 7 levels of the game really well. It ends up showing you sort of what the real threat is, and it also like makes the actions of Emmett Selk make more sense because you see what the consequences of freeing Zodiark are. So I think that it's a fabulous story moment that sets up the rest of this very dark game.
Yeah, I mean that completely. See, I didn't have anything spoiled, so that completely blew me away. I'm like, no, we're not doing this now. There's no way that you're gonna have us fight this now.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't know, I didn't think that it would necessarily be the last boss, but like from what we knew up to that point, I'm like, I thought it was a possibility. I'm like, okay, well, that's could be where this is going, and I almost wonder if maybe that was part of the plan too. It's like, no, we're gonna have you fight it now because then you won't know what's coming up next. Because after that, I'm like, why? I'm out of ideas. I'm like, I thought we were gonna lead up to this much later, but we're doing it now. So I'm like, well, now I'm in the deep end. I don't know what's going on.
I thought it was a really neat setup for the later parts, just because you did not see it coming.
Right. I mean, like,
Better.
I never in a million years would have expected the second trial to be Heidelin. Like
Right?
like that was not spoiled for me.
Oh, good.
And I was like, what? Like I'm fighting Heidelin, which is also a phenomenal trial. And the X for that's actually very fun. Like it ends up like when you talk about sticking the landing, like they could have really stretched it out. They could have really stretched out the Zodiark thing, and then we would have been like speculating, like, oh, what's next after the Zodiark thing? But no, like you didn't have any time to speculate. It's like, oh, here it is. Here's what's happening. And all of their stuff on the moon is really cool, at least before you get to the bunnies.
Aw,
Oh,
thought they were
you
cute.
don't like the bunnies.
That just like all the quests there. Oh no, I did. That's like my only part of Endwalker I don't really enjoy.
Okay,
Well,
yeah.
I
In
don't know
terms of
for
quest,
it's
you're right. It's a little. It does drag a little bit.
Yeah, it's but like you see all the like sort of the Asians that are left by Heidelin to watch over it, and you get all this really interesting lore around it. You get the golden dog to fly around on, which is definitely one of the best mounts in the game. Argos is amazing. Um, but then you start to sort of see what the end game is, right? Like after you beat Zodiark and you're like, oh crap, what's about to happen? Like then you start to kind of get a feel for what the end game is going to be because you eventually run into the naming ways or the Loporits, I think is their actual name in this
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
Their naming ways. I won't call them anything else. So when you're in the naming way area, which has the actual Final Fantasy IV town music, which is awesome.
Yeah.
The only awesome part of that. It's like such a big area too, and like it takes so long to get between these. But anyway, like the naming ways are there, and they were like put there by Heidelin, if I'm not mistaken, and also the people of Charlian are communicating with them with the idea that they are creating a moon to then help escape the final days if the final days come to pass, and it certainly appears as if they are. And they have no idea what they're doing. So like it is kind of amusing to sort of see them just like consistently not know like what humans would actually need, and how like they take the least human in our party to stay behind to help them figure out what humans need. The guy who speaks in broken Shakespearean English.
I
um
actually thought that was a cute little
it
thing
is
with
cute.
your
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Android.
I think it is cute. I agree with you. But yeah, I think that the bunnies are annoying. But I do think that it's like a fun little break in between like all what's about to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna blame the Charlians. They're like, if any of the Loporets were like, oh hey, what do people like to eat? Like no one in that city's gonna know except like one guy, the guy who runs the restaurant. Everyone else in that city eats basically cardboard. So it's like, well, they're not gonna know. And they're gonna tell these bunnies like they don't know what to do with any of this information. So also, I may have thoughts on the dietary habits of the scholars in Charlian, if you hadn't noticed.
Please
So,
share.
yeah, well, that was part of it. Um, I actually am very entertained by that. That everyone is so busy studying and working, just generally, especially now when they're planning all this like moon arc stuff. That no one has time for like good food. It's just about efficient nutrition, and everything just tastes like nothing. So that the only place in town that serves actual food that is edible is called The Last Stand. And there's this one guy who's like, no, food is important. Food shouldn't just be efficient. It can also taste good. I think it's just really entertaining as someone who's like sort of, I guess, a foodie. Um,
Well, you're definitely a foodie.
okay, I'm a foodie. And as someone who does get into crafting in spurts, the culinarian quest line in the city, you're working with someone who's trying to solve this problem. So like the whole, as the story unfolds over those 10 levels, you're trying to figure out a way to like solve the nutrition needs for someone but still make it taste good. And like you have to like battle the I forget the guy's name you're working with. It's like, no, none of that matters. Like, no, it does. People are like miserable because they're eating cardboard or whatever this bread is that might as well be cardboard. Whatever. I was very entertained by that, and I'm like, I'm doing something so good for the people right now by giving them something they can eat and they won't be miserable about.
And leave it to the English teacher to bring that back into the thematic concerns of the game, but I'm going to. I think that that's really because I haven't seen any of that. But like it totally matches what this game is about, right? Because I think that Endwalker is so much about like those small moments of joy, the small moments of hope, those small moments of struggle, that acknowledges the struggle and but also acknowledges the highs and the lows of life, right? And whereas the people of Charlian being in charge of this are the last people who should be in charge of this, because they are all practicality all the time. Like what is going to work, not what is possible, not what can we do, not like sort of what is the beauty of life. It's all about what can we study. Um, and I think that that's interesting too, because like then the naming ways sort of take that on, right? They don't understand what it means to give people a genuine human experience that is worth living, even in the face of the fact that everyone's going to die and that everything is going to end, right? And so I think that that's a really like it kind of makes me want to do a little culinarian. Um, it's a really beautiful way of sort of condensing some of the themes of this game.
Right. I mean, I'm not gonna encourage you or make you go craft, But it is funny you mentioned that and the Loporrits, because the Loporrits, but the quest line for that is for crafters, and it actually continues off that theme of helping them like understand and like help people, and like just you get give them a better sense of like what people want. You know, there's food here and there's entertainment here. So yeah, I think that all pays off very well.
Don't they start a club or something?
That's part of it. That's part of the entertainment. It's like a little dance club. Yeah.
Yeah, Alana is obviously she crafts, and she's played through it, and I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
This is awesome. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that like the Omega craft, is it crafting or it's gathering for the Omega
Ooh,
quests, right?
it's
Um,
gathering.
yeah, and we'll talk about the Omega stuff later, but like it's like that's also really beautiful and really well done. Like I've heard like nothing but glowing reviews about those quests as well.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to get into it a lot, but like, yeah, I mean, it's basically an epilogue to like the main story, which unfortunately, unless you're gathering at a high level, you're not going to see. I mean, it's not required, but it's an epilogue to the stuff going on in that area, and it's so cool what they did. Like back to what you started saying there too is like about uh, the important things in life, right? Uh, that's also something I think they did well, and um, leading up to this part, like you have these moments, you have stuff. We mentioned briefly the burger, but that whole scene of everyone like sitting around sharing a meal. There's a little like coffee date with Alize, and like there's these little moments that are just to remind you, it's like, oh no, look, like this is what life is about, and this is why we have to like, you know, save this world. Basically, it's like these are the things that make life worth living. So like
Mhm.
I noted all of that, and I always enjoyed those moments that came up.
Yeah, me too. I just uh, I love parts of the game just because they really just dive into that theme really well.
And I think that that theme starts getting tested very soon, because you leave the moon and you go back to Thavnair, and the final days have begun. Um, and I kind of to back up for a second, we know that there is like this force that some of the people of Thavnair um, practice or believe in or are aware of, called Akasha, if I'm not mistaken,
Hmm.
is what
Yes.
they call it. And it's about like the energy of emotion. And it's not something that's, and some people criticize this as being like, well, like this is not something that's ever come up in previous ones, in previous expansions, but like they establish it over a 50-hour expansion, so like grow up. But like like it's they spend so much time talking about this like the emotional force, which is, you know, sort of metaphorical for hope and despair, and things like that. And it turns out that in the final days, basically, like as people start to give into the despair around them, that they become like these enormous monstrosities that um, have given into the despair, and they're sort of like this living embodiment of the despair that they're feeling, and it has started to completely take over Thavnair when you get back. At some point, like, there's a, you know, we find this baby that is
Oh my god, that was like
yeah,
one of my favorite scenes
yeah, yeah, I mean, like
with the baby and the fisherman.
yeah, absolutely. And they save the baby, and then like Vitra and Estinian, which is an epic moment. Vitra and Estinian save them, and like as the baby is starting to give in to their feelings of despair and to become one of these monstrosities, um, Vitra comes in and talks that baby down. I think it's really beautiful, and I think that as we start to see some of this despair overwhelm Thavnair, you also start to see those little glimmers of what we can do to stop it. And it's just about that connection, right? It's about like like these two people, one's a dragon, one's a baby, but coming together in a way that sort of allows them to move past the despair of what they're dealing with.
Well, I did love the whole Vitra deciding to reveal himself.
Oh yeah, that's a great moment.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, so like he's sort of been hiding that he is
Dragon.
a dragon. Yeah, thank you. And when he comes out with it, like people are, you know, obviously, you know, at first not sure about it, but eventually come to accept him over the course of the expansion, and certainly into the patch cycle. And I think Vitra is just such a good character as well.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. I love all the dragons, though. I think they're pretty neat.
Yeah, they do really well establishing all these dragons as interesting and all very unique in what they're doing. Yeah, that whole sequence of the game is really rough. Like I know I said it was a cool dungeon. Thematically, it's interesting, but yeah, because like your characters are like they're not giving in. They're just like, well, what do we do? I mean, it's like it's just everything like just hit all at once, and it's like it's becomes really overwhelming to try to figure out like how to possibly deal with this and keep people at scale from like giving into despair.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think that it's hard to like I think they do a great balancing act, right? Like of showing how easy it is for these people to give into despair, but also to like give these little tiny pockets and moments of hope amongst it, which I think like the way they continue to do some of that thematic stuff that they're doing, even in a moment that's supposed to show total despair, I think is really good. But yeah, I mean, like you find out that like there is or you discuss like sort of what are you going to do about this? Like how do you handle it? You get I can't remember how you get a tip about Elpis from somebody. Like you find an Elpis flower early in Labyrinthos, right?
Yeah, and you're just told to remember the name specifically.
Hmm. And
Um,
then you talk about it, and then somebody tells you to go talk to Litibus. It's
Graha is like,
Graha, yeah.
yeah, he's like, well, we technically could talk to someone who was around long enough to have an idea of what that word might mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you go back off to the first. There's like some questing around the first, if I remember right. I remember like kind of catching up with some people with the first, and I liked that because Shadowbringer still rules. Um, and you end up talking to Elidibus, who is like sort of like this. He's trapped in like some sort of a suspended animation in the Crystal Tower that Graha has trapped him in, and he talks about what Elpis is, and sort of like the Elpis was like sort of the beginnings of the final days for the Asians. And with his last sort of dying breath, he sends you off to go to Elpis. And oh my goodness, I this game I actually think gets better after Elpis. But if you had told me that when I was in Elpis, I would have been like, no, it's not impossible because Elpis is like the best thing that I've ever played in this video game, which is probably my favorite video game. Oh my goodness, this is incredible. So you go back in time to the original Elpis, which is like this island that is a sort of like a housing area for like experimentation on with different species, but like not it's not supposed to at least be in a negative way. You meet a young Emmett Selk. You meet a young Hythlodaeus, and this is before the final days, and you get to sort of see who they are and get a feel for who they are. And Elpis is beautiful, and the music is phenomenal, and I was just like grinning like oh my gosh, like I can't believe like and like it was obviously fan service in a lot of ways. Like they knew that we loved Emmett Selk. Let's give them some more Emmett Selk, but I don't care because Emmett Selk rules.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Personally, I'm also always a sucker for a good time travel story. So like it was hitting me on multiple levels. So I'm like, yeah, yeah. I mean, just let's just keep going. What do you got
Yeah, and
next?
it's rare to find a good time travel story, so this is actually quite nice. Sometimes they can be very poorly written, but this one you did not have to worry about it.
Yes.
Yeah, because I remember, and I guess we'll talk about the end game of Elpis in a second here. But like, I remember as I was playing through it, I was like, "Wait a second! Like, if they do all this stuff, then how does that work?" But then, like, they end up like making everything make sense,
Hmm.
even if they hadn't originally intended to like have us sent back in time. But this is where the real end game of the game starts. Where interestingly, you find the bad guy for what is essentially the entirety of Final Fantasy XIV, the beginner of the problems of the final days that sets the Asians off to do all the things they're doing in the different shards. So you encounter Hermes, who is at first you don't realize who he is, except for that he's in charge of Elpis, and he's like this super sensitive guy. He's super nice. He's super kind. He cares about the things that he's caring for. And you also meet one of the things he's caring for, which is Medion. Who is Medion? And Medion is this person who just feels everyone's emotions. Is full of just like this deep empathy. And in many ways, Hermes is also full of this deep empathy, even though he has his own issues. And you see these people who are just full of empathy. And I remember thinking as I was playing it, like how are they gonna make these people the bad guys? And the way that they make feelings something that you like that these people need to be cautious about, or about like what you can be overwhelmed by, I think was really great. So what was your some of your early impressions of Elpis?
Absolutely gorgeous, and I really liked the Hermes and Medion storyline. I thought that was really fascinating. And more Emmett Silk is always a good thing.
Yeah. When you say early, I'm going to let you introduce the thing that we want to talk about the most here. So I won't talk about that yet. But yeah, I mean, when you first see the area, it's such a cool place to be, and it's just interesting, like mingling under like sort of false pretenses for a while, because the guys you're with don't really know what you are. They think you're like a familiar. Um, and just seeing what they do, there's a fun little conversation with like this like bipedal shark thing that's like on the road, and Emmett Selk is like, what is that? And Hythlodaeus is just explaining, it's like, well, sharks are just really popular around here, so like people keep like throwing out new ideas for sharks, and, like, there's some that can fly and there's some that can do this, and this is just the latest one. So like just that little bit of dialogue gives you a really good sense of like what they're doing there. Like they're creating species, and like, let's see if this works. And of course that like really comes into play like later on if you get into like the raids and stuff, like the creation stuff of this
Yeah,
world.
all the stuff with pandemonium. Yeah.
Yeah. Um
Uh,
yeah.
I also like all the background we get about Asm,
Yeah.
which I think is really cool. Like, and I think it's like a really smart move that we are never correct me if I'm wrong here, but we're never introduced to Asm.
Right. Well, not the current one as of this
Yeah,
point in time. No. We meet someone
right,
who used to be.
right.
Also,
You do indeed.
that's something. I mean, this is technically after this beginning part, but like that's something that comes up a lot in Elpis, is like learning like all the Ascians, like their names aren't really their names, and like
Hmm.
they're like, this one is like, no, these are positions and stations. It's like it's very overwhelming for a while. It's like,
Hmm.
oh,
It is.
this is this, and this person is all known by these four different names. Like, okay.
It feels like I was playing a Kingdom Hearts game for a second there.
Well, they do also look kind of
Yeah.
like Organization 13.
Yes, actually, yeah.
They do. It's not wrong. Yeah, I mean, and you learn all these backgrounds about the current Asm, and Hermes is being set up to take over the place of, is it
Fan
Elidibus?
Fan Daniel, I think.
Fandaniel. Yeah. It's setting up to be taking over the space of Fandaniel, which is when we start to realize that Hermes, the Hermes that we meet in Elpis, is the Fandaniel who we know. So it goes through these multiple iterations over time as an Ascian, which makes it makes the whole thing like going from like this sweet, sensitive Hermes to this insane megalomaniac. Can I say megalomania? I can. This person who's full of megalomania, and seeing sort of how they would have gotten there, and thinking about all the pain and suffering that Hermes would have had to have gone through to become who Fandaniel is. Like, and we don't have to see any of it to feel like sort of the weight of that.
Yep. Yep.
But yes, as Mike alluded to, they also introduce it's kind of introduced because we've already met her before, sort of, the best character in Final Fantasy XIV, who is Vana, who is the former Asm, and as we very quickly realize, becomes Heidelin. And she is just so good. She's full of life. She's full of energy. Her introduction is phenomenal, where she comes in. There's so much to talk about with Vana. I could have an entire podcast episode about Vana. We're not doing that today, but I get a feeling the next 15 minutes will be spent talking about her. Vanah's fantastic. So what did you guys think about Vanah?
Oh boy. I got really, oh my god, I don't want to get emotional here. You know what's interesting about her is as you get to know her and as you can just in her dialogue, and I'm going to briefly mention like her voice actress, um the actor who plays Vanah and Emmett Selk, and I was reminded watching cutscenes again today, Golbez. There's some amazing actors in Endwalker. Um, but she captures the spirit of that character so well. You know, me, like when I tend to play, you know, I don't I don't get into like role playing or anything, but like I definitely like play as like, you know, well, my character is me. Like I'm very personally invested in her. Um so Vinav's whole thing is that she is invested in you. I mean in mankind in general, but like and you're part of that. It's like it's you, or therefore me, as in my example here, are so important to her, and like that comes through in everything she does, and just her passion for helping people and how much she cares about everything and just enjoys the world and discovery and all that. It's like it's so just beautiful. um like every time she was on screen I was just enraptured.
She's definitely a scene stealer, I think. I There's some scenes with her that I just, wow, I cannot believe that how they present them. I thought they were really cinematic and just incredibly telling of her character.
Right. Also, because again, I rewatched these cutscenes in preparation. I'd forgotten that like maybe her third line after meeting you is like, "Huh, you're from the future." And it's like, "What
Oh
the?"
yeah.
Like, okay, like we're not
None
going
of
to
the
be.
other people ever figured it out. She was
No,
like, nope.
she's like, "Oh yeah, I figured it out." I'm like, okay,
Yeah, I mean, um, there's a cutscene that's on like sort of those outskirts bridge, where she, asks you if it's been worth it, where she really wants to sort of understand because like she sort of understands what she's about to do, like that she is about to sunder mankind, that she's about to split the worlds over 13 different worlds, and split souls across those 13 different worlds, and the suffering that she's going to give you, but it's not even but that question's not about her. The question's really genuinely about you. And it's so like as a person who like just genuinely cares about what is happening to you, and what is happening to people, and is really so genuinely invested in what is best for the continuance of mankind. And I know that you're a big fan of that cutscene, Mike.
I just
But I
wrote
think
about it. I just
you
wrote about it
did.
in our feature.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I actually just read that right up yesterday to remind myself. Beautifully written.
thank you.
Um, but the cutscene where you start to see the final days happening, and where she enacts the sundering, and then as she walks through, and you get to sort of see in real time like all that suffering that she endures as the person who becomes Heidelin. I think is also a cutscene that I think might actually even be better. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Audra.
that's the one that I was really thinking of.
Yeah, it's stunning. I think
Hmm.
for me, it's the best cutscene in the game, because it just shows the weight of what she has to bear, as Heidelin, as like this sort of figure. Like she's not Vana anymore. She can't be Vana. She doesn't get to be Vana anymore and have that joy. But that joy still informs her decisions. Um, and it also sets up sort of like that idea that suffering, like the Asians are living in this world where suffering doesn't exist, not really. Um and like this idea that suffering is part of the human condition, and is part of actually what makes the other moments matter. I think that that cutscene does an amazing job of it, and her asking you if the suffering that you've endured has been worth it. It's just like so. It's not anything like mind blowing philosophically. This isn't Nietzsche we're talking about here, but it doesn't need to be. Like it's just so true and pure and human.
Hmm.
Right. Yeah, because she's looking at everything that is going on and what might have to happen, and she's like, you know, she's obviously having second, third, fourth thoughts about it. But it's like, but if you could tell her, it's like, well, if your life was worth living or has been worth living, then it was the thing to do. Which, of course, beautifully, you get interrupted before you can answer her. Until much later, anyway.
Indeed. And yeah, I mean, and not to move off of Divina too quickly, but like we sort of then see how what's happened with Medion. So we learned that Hermes has sent off all the sisters of Medion to go study other worlds. And the problem is that Medion, who is a person who does feel every feeling, sees, and she's immature, right? Like she doesn't have the experience um, to understand sort of the highs and lows. She just sees the lows because the lows are so intense, right? She sees the suffering, and all the sisters see the suffering, and the medium becomes part of that. And she is the one who decides that like the suffering needs to end. Like, and it's what allows people to give in to Dynamis, this emotional force that changes people. And of course, what part of the reason that Vana does the Sundering is that it makes the power of Dynamis less strong, um, but it also allows you to harness it in a different way than the Asians can. So you get all those pieces, like the cutscene at the end of the dungeon with Hermes and Medion, where he's trying to protect Medion after you've all realized that Medion can't do that. There's a cutscene earlier we didn't talk about where Emmett Selk learns the truth and he walks away. Like there's so many good moments on Elpis.
Yeah. Um, as someone, this is more of a gameplay thing, I guess, than a story thing, but as someone who very much enjoys using the uh not trust I don't know why trust and duty support are different things. The duty support system where you can go into dungeons with npcs and stuff, I absolutely love what they did with that dungeon. Because I'm like, there's no narrative way they can have your friends come in with you, so like the idea that you can run through that dungeon with some of the, are they actually called Asians at that point? Anyway,
They're not, but
no,
yeah.
ancients, whatever they are.
Yeah.
That was such a cool touch.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. I think it's a cool dungeon too. It's got like that snow one where like the snow enemy where you have to check the footprints.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty fun. And yeah, like just like the end of that dungeon is just like, oh, like and how Mediana is just trying to protect Hermes and she can't, and how
yeah,
that breaks her and how she leaves. Um, like it makes it all so just like Emmett Selk. I mean, like Hermes is not Emmett Selk and Van Daniel's not Emmett Selk. No one is, but like it makes it that they give such a rich backstory to a villain, that it 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 just it's one of the strengths of 14.
yeah. Well, they're really good outside of one villain that we haven't talked about yet, but I'm sure we will by the end. Um, y-
I wonder who.
yeah. In any story, like I don't want to go too far with this, but like in any story, if you're trying to write a good villain, like any good villain doesn't, they don't think they are a villain, which is very important. They're not out to just like, oh, I'm just gonna do terrible things because I'm awful. I'm like, well, that's not interesting. So yeah, I mean, he does make for a great villain, but like he doesn't see it that way, which is of course what's interesting about it. He's just trying to help. Um, I want I want to briefly mention when this came out, we and I was playing, and our free company was all playing, more or less at a certain pace, although obviously some people get way ahead. I remember when a few of us got to that point, and someone in the free company, when we first meet Medion, was like, "Oh my god, she is so amazing and pure, and if anything ever happens to her, I'm gonna kill everyone." And I was like, "Oh boy, you're right about that." Because like I was still at that point. So then like I years later, I still think back on that comment. I'm like, "Oh boy, oh boy."
Yeah. It's it's interesting that Medion becomes the villain, right? Like the idea that like that level of innocence and purity can be corrupted by sort of just like not knowing. And I'm not really sure what to make of that thematically. But I do think it's interesting that like sort of pure empathy becomes a problem. I don't know. I just think it's interesting.
Well, I think you phrased it really well earlier, because you're talking about how like she's immature, like she was just created. She doesn't have the experience. She doesn't know what to do with it. So yeah, it's one of those like, well, there was good intention behind this, but you didn't fully think it through.
There was a flaw in how Herbie's kind of
Yeah.
the mission goal for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of it's Hermes' own naivete as well, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like Hermes is like so pure too. Like he doesn't want to take on the new Asian role because we haven't talked about this, but that means the Asian like goes off to die, and like that's the only way that that an Asian or an ancient chooses to die, and he's like he's tortured by this, and so there's a purity to him too, and sort of that need to maintain the absolute. I think it really boils down to like that need to maintain like a world without suffering is what ultimately is the problem, right? Because like there is no world without suffering, and there is no real joy without suffering. Um, and so I think that's what it boils down to, right? I mean, I maybe I'm reading too much into it, but
Yeah.
that's kind of my read on it.
That's
Right.
pretty
Right.
good.
Okay, so we've talked about Vana for a while and Elpis because Elpis is so cool. But man, not the next area, but the area after it is even cooler. So we go back to Labyrinthos, and I'll just go through this real fast. I didn't want to talk about it really, except for the very end. And when we're back there, we talk to the council, and we're like, "Hey, we know what you're doing," because we already told them we knew what they're doing a while ago. But like, hey, we know who the problem is. We want to deal with it. Uh, can you let us? And then Fortune, I forgot his name again. Fortuno?
Or Chanel.
Fortuno. Yeah, Fortuno. I got it that time. Yeah, I just need to trust myself. Fortuno has this like really beautiful cutscene with the twins, where he puts his faith in them to do what they need to do, and takes one of the ships off to go find Medion, to go find her off in the wide universe. And it turns out to be on a world called Ultima Thule. And I'll be honest, I had to rewatch the cutscenes for this
Yeah.
because like I was just like weeping the entirety of Ultima Thule. Ultima Thule is still my favorite. I said earlier Golden Mold was. No, I think it's Ultima Thule. I don't know. There's so many good ones in this one. It's definitely an Endwalker, my favorite zone. There are so many things to talk about in Ultima Thule, and so many beautiful moments in Ultima Thule, because it's where it's just like the music is phenomenal. Um, the graphics are incredible. When I say graphics, I just mean like the design of the space is so beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
with all the colors. And it's this world where sort of all the sort of failed worlds, failed peoples that Medion has had to endure, or like sort of the hive mind of Medion and all her sisters have had to endure, where they all sort of collect. And you encounter three of them, but obviously I think there's probably more. And the part that becomes even maybe more emotional is that as you go through it, even though I knew that they were all going to come back, obviously after like the fourth one, I'm like, okay, not everybody's not dying here.
Yeah.
Um, but like, even though I knew that everybody was going to come back, like you have to like sort of sacrifice the bodies of all the rest of your party, all the rest of your friends. But like every single one of those scenes, every single moment, like I feel like Graha's in particular is really powerful.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh,
Um,
Graha, yeah.
yeah, like where
And
they have. Go ahead.
oh, and Urianger choosing to stay with Yaschola. I was
Yeah.
like,
Oh.
oh,
Oh yeah. Oh. There are so many like intensely emotional moments where like it highlights the power of the people around you, the power of that sacrifice. And also it sort of cuts against like sort of the despair of these different groups like the Omegas and the Dragons, um, who are in this space as you're trying to move towards Medion.
It it's something that I think would have was really hard to get right, because that could lose its impact really easily. But like I said, or like you said, same thing with me. Like I knew, I think what the key is, even though we're playing through it and we're like, okay, well, they're not actually gonna take all these characters away from us. Like the first one, I'm like, wait a minute. Like after the first one or two, I'm like, okay, maybe not. But why it works for me is that they don't know that. Their intention and their sacrifice, they're not like, I'm going to come back later. It's like they're committing to it. And I think that's why it still lands, even if it's like it still really gets you. And that the the way, I know you talked about this a little bit, but the way the music works in that area, and how the end of each section of that area is punctuated by one of these moments, and then the next one you get to, there's another layer of music added to the instrumentation as it builds up, is so cool. I thought it was just a really really cool way of doing that. And like, so like as you progress, like everything changes just a little bit at a time.
I haven't been back to Ultima Thule in game for a while, but I think I will next time I play, because it's reminding me of how amazing this area is. And nothing's ever gonna, hit the impact that you get the first time you're going through. Um, but man, like just seeing the devastation of these different people and the sacrifices of your friends, it's such, like, I think that's probably the most consistently I have cried through a video game. I mean, like, we're talking like hours.
Yeah.
Like hours where like I'm consistently crying, either from the last person who did it or from like finding out about like what happened to the people of Omega or the dragons. Um, like it ends up like you start to see like so many of the thematic concerns of this game really crystallize here, where you're seeing the sacrifice cut against the suffering. And I think that, like what you're doing for your friends and what these people are suffering and sort of how those two things work together, I think is really beautiful. But I think the end when you get to the end is like the best part. So you eventually get to Medion. There's like this amazing, like I remember like sort of walking through these different like sort of staircase areas to get to Medion. I don't remember it super vividly. This wasn't a cutscene, so I didn't get to review it.
I that
Can
that
you
was
remind me of this?
that was the one thing I meant to watch today, because yeah, it's not a cutscene. I meant to look up a video to remind myself, but that sequence is so good. Um, it's it because it's like it now all of a sudden it's just you. The last of your group is quote unquote gone, and it's just you alone. Oh shoot, I forgot what the dialogue is. It's mentioned something like, walking to the end. It's something they like throwing that phrase in. But you just see these little like weird shadowy shade things with eyes come up, and as you walk through, and you have to walk, by the way, you can't run. The game, it forces you to slowly walk, and you walk past these shades, and you get dialogue. And I have to go through, like, I recognize some of the characters because they don't tell you who it is, but they're all characters that you've met over the course of the game, like trying to encourage you to go on, like keep going. Oh, I love it so much. um it's such a neat sequence, and then you go up that little like rainbow bridge, again having people talk to you along the way.
Yeah, it's stunning. Like sort of the moment where you like Emmett Salk and Hythlodaeus come back for a minute here as well, if I remember correctly, and they
Yep.
show Medion the beauty that still can exist in the world. And I loved that. Like, and I love that because it also makes the trial in 5.3 makes sense. Where it's like, oh, Emmett Salk knew what he was doing when he snapped his fingers in that trial to help you out against the Warrior of Light. It's like this sort of this idea that once he gets his memories back of everything that happened in Elpis there. And I love that like sort of speech he gives you about all the things you haven't seen yet.
What a troll, right?
Right.
It's just like all of these things that some of them I've been thinking about, because of course I look at the Encyclopedia Eorzea and the maps in the game, and like, wonder when we're going to go there one day. And he's just like throws it all out
Yeah.
at you, like, yeah, by the way, there's a bunch of things you still need to see, and one of them we have now,
We
but
have.
but only one. Yeah.
Yeah. just all the possibilities that he gives you, and like sort of like he's still himself, right? He's still like, I don't really regret what I did to you, but he realizes that he needs to do something different to save things. And I think it's just such a great cap off to Emmett Selk's arc.
Yeah,
That's really started, at the end of Stormblood and through this. Like he's like the most compelling villain in the history of Final Fantasy for a reason, and they do him right here.
yeah. And well, I love that he mentions that too, because it really, I mean, you understand it obviously at this point to most of the way through anyway, but it's another little reminder that he's telling you to go out and explore and experience the world, because he really loves it too, and he wants you to see it. He wants you to see why he loves the world so much, which I thought was a great send off. Which, by the way, another great throwback of lines. That line, we didn't talk about it, which I'm glad we didn't, because now I can bring it up. But that one of the moments when you're trying to figure out what's going on with Hermes and Meteon, and he has that very, very sweet moment about how he will give her a flower when she comes back. When they bring that line back towards the end, I'm like, and it just, that finally is the one thing that finally gets through to her.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it's amazing that Meteon is so compelling in like such a short span of time. Like I think that they do so much with her because she's so pure, she's so innocent. Like all the stuff that happens with Hermes, and like like I was so invested in that moment, even though, and that's amazing because like I could have been invested. I played this game for thousands of hours at that point, and I've known her for 10 hours. But man, like that is so good. And it's because like it's the pure emotion, and like you feel so much for her, and like the pulling that moment in, pulling that moment back, it's so good. um and I think that thinking about everything that this game is doing, because I kind of think this is like sort of the thematic ending of the game. We'll talk about the end a little bit because I don't really care about one of the guys in the ending. um but I think that it's this side of Near Automata, like there is not a better like sort of cry against pain. Like I think about the kind of narratives I love. Like I love narratives that acknowledge that like life sucks sometimes. That life is like super hard sometimes. But then because I think anything else is dishonest, and then finds beauty and joy within that. And I think this is one of the purest expressions of that. And I think about like the second half of the fight against Endsinger, when you're fighting against, all the sisters of Meteon, which I remember, which like until like a patch ago, like I would literally have to tell people when I got it in duty roulette, like please hold DPS so newbies can see the whole fight, because you could burn her way too fast. Like and um when all the rest of the scions like show back up and say light the way, I get emotional every time I play that fight now, because I think that it shows like sort of like what you do in the face of suffering, what you do in the face of these things. And I think when everything seems like crap, who you rely on, and I think it's amazing.
um it, much much less insightful than what you just said, but I love that it works on that level, which of course is the theme of the game, but also is, for a Final Fantasy player, a nice throwback to Final Fantasy 4. uh
It is, yeah.
yeah, so like it again, something else that works on several levels. uh, I mean, again, what you said was more important, but I still wanted to throw it out there because it definitely like took me back to the final battle of Final Fantasy 4 too.
I mean, I think that it's like, and I think that the final battle of Final Fantasy 4 rules, partially for that reason. But I also think that like I've played plenty of JRPGs where like almost that exact same circumstance happens, and like it's dumb. I'm like, come on. Like I'm not going to spoil anything about Xenoblade 3 here, but like something similar happens at the end of Xenoblade 3, and I'm like, oh my gosh, stop. um but here, like I think like that thousands of hours investment you have, like, makes that connection you have to the people who you love in the game like so meaningful. Anyway, that's technically not the end of the game. So after you do that, like off in the middle of nowhere, like because Xenos actually showed up earlier, like as in his what's the name of that
Shinryu.
dragon? In his Shinryu form to take you up there. I skipped it because who cares about Xenos? Um, and then you have your final fight with Xenos. You beat him. The end of Xenos. We don't have to talk about Xenos. Although, in all sincerity, like I think that they took Xenos to his logical conclusion here.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think that they needed to bring Xenos back after Stormblood. I thought he was fine in Stormblood,
Yep.
but I actually like thought that like it's still like a very cinematic moment up there in the clouds, right?
Mhm.
It is. It is. I definitely thought it was unnecessary and just this weird, just like he just sort of becomes an anime villain who just like
Yes, he's like a Shonen Jump villain.
yeah, and I'm like, I don't know. He keeps showing up and I'm like, dude, I don't care about you. And it's sort of a little bit sad because like especially throughout the game, like he just stops like there are moments where he's just like, yeah, I don't even want to fight you right now. Your heart's not in it. And like he just shows up to just walk away and he's like sad because like you're not his entire world. Or he's not your world, but
Yes,
you're
the
yeah.
Warrior of Light is just not into him.
Yes, exactly. And I'm just like, can you just go? Like it's not that bad, but just like it didn't need to be there. But at the same time, I admit that fight sequence is pretty cool, and I do like the little punch sequence. Again,
It's
Yes.
fun. Yeah,
it's completely unnecessary,
yeah,
and then nothing would have been lost if it wasn't there. But whatever.
yeah.
At least he's done with now.
I mean, the only thing that's cool about him is that he brought Reaper into the game,
Yeah.
and that is my main now. It's like the only job I really touch nowadays, except for if I'm leveling something to 100. Yeah, it's funny that like I sincerely don't even think about Xenos when I think about Endwalker. Like, even though he's literally the last fight of really what Endwalker, because the patch cycle is not really Endwalker. It is, but it's not. So yeah, it's just interesting. Yeah, and Xenos is he's there. He
He's there.
exists. He's fine. He
Right.
does nothing to drive the themes of the game forward. I don't think. I mean,
No.
like the worst thing
Which
that
is the
he
point.
does.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, like go ahead. I was just like going to say like the worst thing that he does. We haven't even talked about this. Is that instance where like you become a soldier and you have to walk through Garlemald, which I had to do like 6 times.
That's tough, yeah.
But otherwise, he's like a non-entity. Fandaniel's there; he does plenty. But yeah, and at the end of the game, like the Scions hypothetically don't really break up, and they go off to do their own thing. And because I know that we're going to do a Dawn Trail episode eventually, I do want to very quickly talk about the patch cycle. Usually, like the story kind of continues on through the 0.3 patch, and then like the 0.4 and 0.5 sets up the next story. But here, like it's entirely self-contained, and there's a lot of cool things with it. It's very Final Fantasy IV. You go off to the Void, you meet Golbez, you meet Zero. There's some like Cecil energy or Cecil, I don't know how you want to say it, going on there. You fight the 4 fiends. Like it's all so Final Fantasy IV. And I remember like in the first couple patches being like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then at the end being like, eh. Um, like I thought that the patches were just okay. I think they were either too short or too long. Like I either wanted them to like make it into its own expansion, or it could have probably been done in 3 patches. But there were still things about it I liked, and I think that the Zero element of it is really the best part of the patches. And her sort of understanding humanity, which again gets to a lot of the themes of Endwalker. What did you guys think about the patches?
Pretty much the same thing, I think. I really like the FF4 references, but then, yeah, I kind of felt like some of them maybe could have been shorter or longer, depending on. They were good. Not
I
bad.
I think I'm a little more positive on it, but yeah, I think it's true that Endwalker being self-contained, the main story, really helped its pacing, and I think maybe that accentuated the uneven pacing or slow pacing of the patches. The idea of maybe making it play out over like 3 patches instead of 5 probably would have worked. Like it dragged a little bit. But I did enjoy the 4 references. I like Zero. I mean, again, how do they keep like throwing these characters at us? Like here's this character you've never heard of, but you're going to be invested in them. So I think that was the strong part.
Yeah.
I did
They know how
like,
to write good characters.
yeah, I did like what they did with Golbez. I thought that was an interesting twist. So it wasn't just like it's not a literal like one for one from Final Fantasy IV. So I
Mm.
thought that was cool.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
yeah, I mean, not as strong as Endwalker, but I like it. I don't think it was trying to be. I think it was like this was their moment to be like, let's tell this like side story that's still relevant to the world, but mostly a side story between these 2 expansions.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're running a little long on the tooth here, so I want to kind of wrap up. But like, I do want to talk about one thing before we leave, and I want everybody to pick. And you can do from the patch cycles, so you can do an alliance raid, you can do just like a normal raid, you can do a dungeon, a trial. But what from Endwalker? What was your favorite sort of combat instance? We haven't talked about the combat much at all, but there's not much new in Endwalker in terms of the combat, except for Sage and Reaper. And of course, I'm a big Reaper fan. I feel like it's very much an extension of Shadowbringers, and Dawn Trail is very much an extension of Endwalker in terms of job design. They found kind of what works to them. Um, but what was your favorite amongst them? If you had to pick any of them, raid, trial, alliance raid, whatever.
All 3 alliance raids.
Okay.
Um, I think those are my favorite alliance raids. Uh, mm, okay, 2 of the near ones are close, but I love what they did with that. That was just it was a lot of fun. It's beautiful, really interesting fights.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it feels like sort of like a very clear epilogue to Endwalker too, right? Like it's you get to find out what's going on with the 12, you find out sort of what their relationship with Heidelin is. Um I I didn't call who the last one would be, but Alana did, which I thought was cool. And yeah, like the areas are stunningly beautiful, like just amazing. What about you, Audra?
I like the ITS scope. I just like the idea from a lore stance, just the way they had the past characters in it. I thought that was really neat, and I just like the gameplay and how you were battling through and you met like different presences there, and it connected everything.
And I really like the last boss there too, because it brings back some of the mechanics from Amon
Yes.
in the Crystal Tower, but like it recontextualizes them. Yeah, I mean it's like a beautiful dungeon. It leads up to like, you know, your trial against Heidelin, to where she allows you to sort of go off to Ultima Thule, which we didn't talk about at all. It's awesome. So I'm glad you brought it up. The Aetioscope
Yay.
is excellent.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite dungeons of the game, just from like a pure beauty perspective, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But I think that the fights in there are really cool too. So for me, I think it's the Heidelin trial. I just think that the mechanics are really varied. I like how it's like thematically relevant. I like how she like. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's the truth. Like when she says like think, feel. You know, I think that it gets to like all the things that she wants you to do. She wants you to feel your feelings, which that sounds obvious, but you know most people don't. And it's a really well designed fight. I like the extreme version of it a lot as well. It's really really cool and well balanced. I think that the arena is excellent. I actually think overall some of the combat design in Endwalker is maybe a slight step down from Shadowbringers in terms of the fight design, and I think Dawn Trail, which we don't have time to talk about, but it brings it way up. I think the fights in Dawn Trail are just excellent, and the dungeons are excellent and varied,
Yeah,
really
yeah.
interesting. Whereas I think Endwalker falls into a very like familiar patterns. So I actually think that's like maybe a slight weakness of Endwalker, but the story is so strong I don't care. Does anybody have any other final thoughts about Endwalker? Sort of a final review, final thoughts about what you enjoyed most about Endwalker?
Just the way they culminate the entire storyline from A Realm Reborn up and even beyond that. I mean, I think it was just really impressive.
Yeah.
Not a lot of stories can do that, I think,
No,
as successfully.
that's a tall order, right?
Mm-hmm.
That many, several games and years worth of experience. That's hard. I mean, there's a lot of plot threads that have been introduced over that time. But yeah, I mean, that's what they set out to do with Endwalker, and I knew I figured they would cover like the main things. You know, they would wrap up the main story, but like so many characters came back. We didn't it's not a huge, I mean, it's an important scene. We didn't really talk about it, but there's a scene somewhere around the middle where you're trying to help gather everyone to help Garlemald. And I mean, like, you're in Alamigo and it's like everyone is there. And not all the obvious characters you would think. I thought that was a cool scene, and it was one of the moments that told me it's like, oh, they're not forgetting anything in Endwalker. They're like, oh yeah, remember this character? Well, you probably should, but they're here and they're important.
I love that they even brought the Beast Tribe people back into it
Yeah,
later
yeah.
on. That was great with the summons.
hmm There's you know, they don't shy away from like bringing in like the leaders of the nation in general, but I thought it was cool about that they didn't bring in the people that you talk to the most. Like the lead of the person from Gridania is oh no,
The brother,
I know,
Aaron, Aaron,
Aaron something. Their name,
The person
yeah.
from the White Mage quests?
no, her brother. Um, yeah, and I thought that
I
was
thought so. Yeah.
yeah, and I thought that was cool because like it's not the most obvious choices, and but they are important to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually because I was rewatching cutscenes, and you can toggle this on or off, but if you've leveled White Mage, there's a little bit of extra dialogue in there where he's like, actually, you're a healer too, you can help out. But that kind of thing where it's like they touched on so many things in the main story and in like side quests. So you have that sequence in Alamigo that really like brought more characters into the fold. We didn't really talk about this much because it's not as important as the overall narrative, but the relationship of the twins and their parents, but especially their father, um, very strained. It always has been. Um, that seeing that through to the end and understanding why he is the way he is, and seeing them like finally like come together and like resolve their differences was also really great. Just
Yeah,
there's so much that they like wrapped up or like touched on or brought in, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a ton of stuff too, but those are the ones I wanted to talk about.
I loved Yurianje meeting up with Moonbrida's
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
parents.
I
yeah.
forgot about that.
Yeah, me
Woo!
too. See?
That's
No,
such a good moment.
that's
Oh,
huge. Yeah.
yeah, I had totally forgot about that. That's in like in almost any other video game that would be like the highlight to me because it's such a powerful moment.
Yeah.
But like we talked for an hour and 40 minutes and I totally forgot about it.
Yep.
So yeah, that's just the power of Endwalker. And yeah, I mean, like my answer is kind of similar to Mike's. It's like they fired like all their barrels at once. You know what I mean? Like, and they did it in a way that like didn't feel like they were throwing too much against the wall. Like it was like, we're gonna give you everything you want with the end of this saga. We're gonna do that. I mean, I'm sure, of course, some people were dissatisfied, but we're going to give you everything we can with this one story. And we're going to surprise you along the way. We're going to do things you weren't expecting. We're going to introduce whole new characters who are really kind of the big bad, and we're gonna make them work. And so like all the callbacks are great, all that stuff is great, but it's like it's the pacing of it that I think is just phenomenal. So yeah, Endwalker is amazing. If you've somehow listened to this whole episode and haven't played Final Fantasy 14 yet, Needless to say, you can play it almost entirely as a single player experience. You can also play it all the way up through level 70, the expansion Stormblood, for free. Um, so it's definitely a game worth playing. And I'm looking forward to chatting with some of you maybe in a few years about Dawn Trail, which I liked a lot. It's not Endwalker, but I liked it a lot. So yeah, so thank you both so much for talking with me about this for so long. I feel like there are so many things we didn't talk about, but that's Endwalker. It's just it's so dense with stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's so much more we could say about just this. The problem whenever we talk about 14 as a game, or if I bring a song on Rhythm Counter, I make the mistake of having that thought in the back of my head. I'm like, no, we could start a fourth podcast that's just about 14. We have enough interest. I'm not going to go through with it right now, but I keep thinking about it.
I think the key is finding someone to edit it.
That's true.
So thank you. And we can't have a 14 podcast probably, but every once in a while in Retro Encounter we can talk about it, and I'm excited we got to come together and talk about it this week.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what's coming up next week. Next week we're going to have an entire episode dedicated to Vanillaware, all those Vanillaware games that are beautiful, that I desperately want to play, and I have never played more than 15 minutes of any of them. I would say I'm excited to listen, but I probably won't because I need to play some Vanilla Gameware first, from Vanillaware games first. But I know that we have a lot of excitement about that. I believe Wes is hosting that, and I know that they'll do a great job. But later this month, I'm excited for this one.
I can't wait.
Because I'm on it, and Solosi has to play it, and I'm playing it on critical mode, which is surprisingly fun. And it's a Kingdom Hearts 2. So that much loathed franchise for Retro Encounter is making its return after Kingdom Hearts 1, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember the exact timeline when Solosi first played it. Little small spoiler alert, Solosi has not complained about Kingdom Hearts 2 yet in his playthrough. So we'll see if he likes it better. We can hope so. But then coming in November, and I can actually announce this, I'm the first one to announce this, we are going to play The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, which, is good timing with the new Zelda game that just came out. And so I'm excited to listen to that. I haven't played that game in so many years, but it's so good. Anyway, if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us retro@rpgfan.com. You can also get in touch with us in a lot of social media places. You can get in touch with us on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, on Blue Sky. I think we're on Threads, Discord, YouTube. We have a Twitch stream almost every day from Scott. We're like all over the internet. If you just type in RPG Fan, you're going to find us, or RPG Fan.com in some places, you're going to find us. We also have 2 other fine podcasts. We have Random Encounter, which is about random things, mostly about, sort of the newer games that are coming out, maybe some current events news. The most recent one I was on, I think it was the most recent one. Yeah. I was talking about Castlevania Dominus, and also just geeking out over the new Lunar game, which you might hear again on Retro Encounter, sometime soon. And then we also have the other Monday that Random Encounter is not on, Rhythm Encounter, which is often hosted, almost always hosted by Mike Salbato.
That's true. I guess
Hi, Mike.
Hello. Is this you saying, tell us what's going on at Rhythm Encounter Land?
What's going on at Rhythm Encounter Land?
Last week we did an episode on inspiring games. That was a lot of fun. Nier and Final Fantasy XIV may have featured.
Excellent choices.
Yes. In October, I wanted to lean into Halloween and stuff. So we are doing a composer episode for Michiru Yamane, who many people know for Suikoden and Castlevania. So there will be some Castlevania. And then we're doing specifically a Halloween episode because we haven't done one in 4 years. So a lot to look forward to there.
Excellent. Looking forward to listening to those. If you want to give us feedback, you can also give us a rating on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify. If the podcasts are there, we're there. We love feedback, especially of the 5-star variety. And to close out, let's talk about how we can get in touch with each of the panelists, starting with you, Mike.
You can't. Oh, no, you can email me at mike@rpgfan.com.
And Audra.
You can email me at audrab@rpgfan.com.
And continuing the pattern, you can also email me, zachw@rpgfan.com, or I am not active on our Discord, but I do lurk there sometimes, begrudgingly, as Zach W. So thank you both so much for coming to join me. I had a really good time talking about Endwalker. I wish we could have talked for 2 hours more, but not everybody wants to listen to that. But you guys both brought so many good insights and thoughts about Endwalker and reminded me of why this is one of my favorite games. So thank you both.
Thank you too.
You're welcome. It was fun.
And thank you, listeners. Good night and good luck.